Hey everyone, it's that wonderful time of the year again when I get to grade several hundred students and their exams. And this gives me a wonderful opportunity to demonstrate how if then else if logic functions in Excel and VBA, that is Visual Basic Applications, the programming language of Excel. Now the basic idea is that for every question in the exam, I give a certain number of points. The maximum number of points you can get on the exam is 100 and the lowest you can get is 0. However, the final grade is a letter grade from A to F, so you can get A, B, C, D, E or F. So I need to somehow convert the aggregate sum of points that each candidate gets and turn it into a letter grade. And the way to do that is to use if then else if. Here in the worksheet you can see that I put up some different scores. They don't really belong to any particular student, so just made some up. And we can convert this into the letter grade in the worksheet by using worksheet functions, the if function. The problem with the if function, the worksheet function I mean, is that it is binary. It can only give two outcomes. One particular outcome if the condition is true and another one if it is false. And the issue here is that I have more than two outcomes. I have 6 different grades, A, B, C, D, E, F. So how do I get several different outcomes? Well, I need to nest several if functions inside of each other. So if you look here, for instance, we start out if A5, which will be the score over here, is less than 40, well, then I get an F. Well, if that is not the case, which means that F is, or the score is greater than 40 points, then I have an other if function. And the second if function I ask, is the score less than 50? If that is the case, then we get an E. If that is not the case, then we get yet another if function. In the third if function here, we ask, is the score less than 60? If that is the case, we get a D. If that is not the case, then we get yet another if function. And in this, what's it, 1, 2, 3, 4. In this fourth if function, we ask, is the score less than 80? If that's not the case, then we get a C. And, if that is the case, then we get a C. And if it's not the case, we get yet another if function. The fifth if function here, if the score is less than 90, then B. If that is not the case, then we get an A. And in my explanation here, I kind of messed up. And that is kind of the point here, because the big issue with the if function in the worksheet is that it becomes very messy very fast. Since it's only binary, we keep nesting more and more of them inside of each other. And this makes it very difficult to read, especially for other people. So you can make it, you understand it, someone else probably not. And this conversion from the numeric points to the letter grade, this is one of the easiest if functions that you can make. Quite often you get something that's a lot more messy. For instance, if you have to use the operators, the AND operator or the OR operator, then this suddenly becomes even more unreadable. So just exactly the same thing. Down here, I have used the AND operator. And it's kind of redundant in this case. I just wanted to demonstrate how messy it actually becomes. Because when we nest them inside of each other, we kind of already know that the previous if function was false. But so this is a bit of redundant code, but I just wanted to demonstrate there what it looks like if you add some operators, AND or OR. So here you can see, if the score is less than 40, then we get F, same as last time. If it's false, we get an if function. I'm going to explain this second one. I'm not going to do all 5. We have an AND operator here, which is actually a function inside of the worksheet. So if the score is greater or equal to 40, and at the same time, if the score is less than 50, then we get E. So I added this AND operator here, which is kind of redundant in this case because of the way we structured or the way we nested the if functions. If we did not have an optimal way of nesting the if function as I did here, then we would need to add this AND operator. So you don't really need to, I'm not going to explain too much of the worksheet here. My whole point is basically that it's messy, it's not very readable. So the solution, in my opinion, is to use VBA. And many people are a little bit skirmish when it comes to VBA. It's not, oh no, this is too difficult for me. But I actually believe that even people without any kind of programming experience are actually better off by using VBA if function. So VBA, what is that? Well, it is the programming language of Excel, and you always have that available in Excel unless you're working for a company that's kind of disabled it, because you can kind of mess things up for your colleagues if you really want to. On cybersecurity crime, I suppose. It could be a cybersecurity issue, basically. But in vanilla Excel, you have access to VBA, even though you might not actually see it. So up here, I have the so-called developer tab. That's where we can do all the VBA stuff. By default, this is not activated. I'm not going to show you to activate this because you don't really need it for this example. You can open up the VBA editor by using the shortcut, hold down the Alt button, and then you click on the F11 button. And this will open the VBA editor. Now, I've already made the functions because it's going to take far too long time if you're going to watch me type this out. But you're going to get this window and it's going to be gray here because you have not any active module. A module is basically a notepad text document where you can type in stuff. Just type in your code. So if it's gray, then you need to insert a new module. And the way to do that, you can use shortcuts, or I can just show it here with the graphical user interface. All the way up here, you have insert. You click on that, and then you can click on module, and then it becomes white here. So I have made several different versions of this if function just to demonstrate for you. So we start by writing function, and there are basically two things you can do in this module. You can make a function, or you can make a subroutine, which is also called a macro. But in this case, we make a function, then we specify the name of the function, and it's important that you don't use a name that Excel is already using. And also you need to have a valid name. So if I had a space here, for instance, white space, this is an invalid name, that's not going to work. Then open parentheses and parentheses. Inside this parentheses, we need to list up all the input variables. And in this case, there's only one input, and that will be the numeric score, where it goes from 0 to 100. And then I specify the data type. So double just means that we have a numeric variable that can be a decimal number. If I only had integers, I would just write as integer. And then after a parenthesis, you specify the data type of the output of the function. So the output of the letter grade function is going to be a string, a letter A, B, C, D, E, F. Next there, I have defined some variables. Before that, we have this straight apostrophe, and then I wrote thresholds here. This is a comment. The text is in green, and this is a comment. It's not interpreted by the software. So we have 6 possible grades, A to F. That means we're going to have 5 different thresholds. So T1, or threshold 1, is equal to 40, and it doesn't have to be equal to 40. This is just what I usually apply when I grade my exams. We have threshold 2, threshold 3, 4, and 5, and that's all we need. So what I did here is basically a very inefficient way of doing it, but I have basically tried to replicate what we did in the worksheet without nesting them inside of each other. So if the score is less than threshold 1, so if the score is less than 40 in particular, so it's just 35, then the grade, which is a variable I just defined here on the spot, is going to be equal to the string f. Now it's important that we have this double apostrophe to indicate that this is a string. This is not going to work. We need to have the apostrophe, just to mention that. And when you use if then else logic in VBA, you always have to end with an end if, otherwise you're going to get an error message. The only exception from that is if we manage to put it on one single line. So if it's on one single line here, we don't need to have the end if at the end. But this is a little bit unreadable. I actually prefer it. I think it's more aesthetically pleasing and easier to read if you put it this way. So we have an if function here, and it's basically binary. If the condition is fulfilled, then we get an F. If it's not fulfilled, then I haven't specified anything. Nothing is going to happen. Second here, we do exactly the same thing. If the score is greater or equal to threshold 1, and at the same time the score is less than threshold 2, then the grade gets the output string E for echo, and end if. So here we see the end operator. Both of these two conditions needs to be true, otherwise the whole if function will not be true. And as you can see, we're just doing exactly the same thing 6 different times. So that is one way to make if functions. We have many if functions inside of one single function here. But there are a more efficient way to do this. I'm going to show you the second version here. Again, we have a function. We call it lettergrade underscore version 2. We have one input variable, score as double, could be like a decimal number. And the output is a string again. We have the same thresholds. But this time we only have one very big if function, but we apply else if. So if the score is less than threshold 1, then we get an F. else if the score is greater or equal to threshold 1 and the score is less than threshold 2, then you get the grade E. And then yet another else if, which is pretty similar, another else if, and even one more, and even one more. So we can have as many if functions inside of one if function, but we have to call it else if. Only the first one can be called if, and the rest is else if. And in the end here, I kind of use an else if here to specify to get the A, but we could also just add an else in the end here, which is what I'm going to show next there. So this again, this works. This is a nice way to do it. However, it is a bit of redundant code in here. Because the thing is that VBA will work from the top to the bottom. So in the first here, we are checking if the score is less than 40. The second one here, it's not really necessary to ask if the score is greater or equal to 40, because if it wasn't, then we would stop up here. So we can kind of actually remove the first part here. So in my third and final version here, we have removed a bit of redundant code. Pretty much the same for the first line. We have the threshold, and here we get the whole if statement. If score is less than threshold 1, then we get F. Else if the score is less than threshold 2, then we get E. And notice here I removed the first here. We're not using the AND operator. I don't need to specify that the score needs to be greater or equal to 40, because you already know that to be true, because the first one here was determined to be false. And in the end here, I just add in an else. And notice when I use the else in the end here, I don't need to specify the condition. If all of the above was false, then the output will just be the else here. Now there is one danger here. Basically, to get the else here, you want it to be the case that if the score is greater than 90, between 90 and 100, then you get an A. But if I were to write in something else, something invalid, like 700, that could be like a mistake on my part when I'm grading, you'll still get an A. So this is like a catch-all. If all the above is false, then you get an A. So yeah, that was a quick and dirty example that I use quite a lot when I am grading. So hope you enjoyed it, hope you learned something, and if you did, and if you want to show some compassion for me, then you can give this video a like, and you can what's it called, subscribe, and some other stuff. I don't remember what the other stuff you're supposed to do. Something with a bell or something. I'm new to YouTube. I don't know how this works, but maybe you do. So yeah, hope you learned something. See you around. Oopsie loopsie, it seems I forgot to actually show how you used the function in Excel. So once you made the function in VBA, you can just use it in the worksheet, pretty straightforward.